Welcome back to the Student Hub Live event, which is about making the most of your Access module. Well, we've had a jam-packed morning looking at so many different things, like the importance of using evidence, how to address the specific question as opposed to one you'd prefer it to be, and we've taken a look at Y031. And in this next section, we take a look at Y033, studying STEM subjects. And I'm joined by Yoseph and Isabella, who are two tutors on the module. But before we do that, you guys have been sending us in some great pictures. So I'd like to take a quick trip to HJ, and Anna Victoria's now on the hot desk as well, to see what you've been up to.
Yeah, we're really excited. Everyone's just come off lunch. We've had shrimps and banana sweets, and we're feeling a bit queasy after having too many. And Zoe's had some chicken brioche as well, so that sounds lovely. But yeah, we've had loads of photos sent in to us. So I know Anna Victoria is very excited for this one.
This one is Coco. It's sent from Leslie, and I really want Coco cuddles.
Oh.
Coco is beautiful.
And we've got Diesel Dog sent in by Jules as well. A very lovely study buddy there.
We also have Bella, who is Sarah's study buddy.
Oh. I don't know how people get any work done. It's such magnificent creatures.
We've got Charlie and Bertie, so two lots of trouble there from Emma as well.
And not a pet, but equally gorgeous, Emma's study buddy here.
Oh.
And Martin's actually sent in some of his other studies. So he was talking to us earlier how he's been studying Japanese, and he told us in his email that the Access module has already broadened his mind to study and given me so much more to think about. And he said, for me, the Open University is a chance to take my life in a new direction. After years of uncertainty about higher education and finance, the time has come. Looking forward to my time with the OU. So that's lovely and positive and great to hear.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you. Where can people send more stuff to?
Yeah, so I know Zoe sent in another picture, which we'll get ready shortly. But anything you send in to us, send it to our email, studenthub@open.ac.uk. Just let us know it's your picture and you're happy for us to use it for Student Hub Live. Or our Twitter as well, @Student Hub Live. Just send a message to us with your picture as well.
Brilliant, excellent. Well, we're joined by you two, who are both tutors on Y033, which is our STEM Access module. Now, we've been talking about some of the variety of stuff that people can learn about on Y031, and we'll be talking about Y032 later. But in the STEM module, I mean, there's so many interesting things, and this module covers so many different areas. So can you tell us briefly what sorts of things students might expect to study in this module?
Students will be expected to practice or bring science to life in their own home. So some of the things will include like experimenting on how much water is included in potatoes. Probably you are paying only 20p for the potato, while 80p would be just for the water, which you will cook. So it's a lot of fascinating questions like that, and you can try it on any other vegetables as well. So bringing science to life and experimenting is one thing students will be doing.
Excellent. Isabella, we were talking about the lasagna bridge earlier.
Yeah. Now, apparently I'm not supposed to mention when we had a go as tutors, because we were a little bit naughty and didn't follow the instructions. So
which is something we don't encourage students
we don't encourage, no, because it's very, very naughty to do it do it in a bad way. But Joseph, he's already stolen my thunder, because I love the experiments, because he says it's bringing science to life, because it is STEM, so it's science, technology and engineering. So depending on the...
And mathematics.
And the mathematics, sorry.
The mathematics.
Yes, well, I sort of was going to slip that one in, because we're going to talk about that a bit.
Maths is great.
Maths is great, and maths is underpinning everything, and maths comes throughout the module, and Joseph's got some fantastic ideas that he's going to share later about helping on that one. I'm not going to steal your thunder, don't worry. So it's looking at the various different aspects and thinking about how science, how technology, how engineering, how maths help us understand our world. And it's fascinating. There's so many ways, and because it's real world applications and real life, you suddenly go, oh, I've just read this in the newspaper. Now I know what they're talking about, and that's one of the fantastic parts of the module.
Or trying to get 80% off your potatoes because of
yeah, absolutely.
So can I ask you then both, what are your favourite bits of the module then? What highlights would you tell students? We've got a lot of students who are studying the other modules here today. What do you think is the best bit?
Accomplishment of maths. Maths is not popular. Everyone would think that they are not good with numbers, but actually maths is like training for a sport. You just have to do it again and again, and then you can do it. So I feel the accomplishment is the feeling that you can do it is something that is my favorite part of the module.
So it's more a feeling that you get by practicing those skills and then feeling satisfied that you can do them.
Yes, yes. Locally, last week, we had a lot of people doing the Milton Keynes Marathon, and most of the people looked really much normal people like us. They just have been training a bit longer. And that is it with maths as well. If you keep going at it, there's no surprise you'll be able to do it. And that feeling of euphoria at the end, and possibly a medal, is probably that keeps you going.
Possibly a medal. Well, you won't get that on Y033, but you'd certainly get a certificate.
Yes.
Isabella, what do you like most about Y033?
So other than the experiments, it's the real world application, and genuinely the maths is the bit that I probably get the most questions about, and it's the scary bit, but it's actually the really simple. This is how maths affects our everyday life. So if you're going to go on a journey and you've got to buy petrol, actually, how much does it cost you per mile if you use this petrol? Or how would that compare to a train journey? Or looking at various different things, or if there are chemicals, if you read about a chemical leak, what does that actually mean? When they're talking about parts per million or something, and you go, oh, what does that actually mean? And you go, oh, right, that's why it's an issue. This is safe levels and so on. And it's just, it's real world in so many different ways. And I that's the bit I love about it the most. And then when you get to block 3, there's the engineering, and you get to design a school. Well, actually, what's the most important thing? How big do the classrooms need to be? Do you need the light? Do you need this? And that's like, oh, wow, never really thought about that, but actually really, really useful.
Oh, OK, so things that you may not expect. Well, you both mentioned maths, and we've asked people at home what words come to mind when they think about studying maths, so let's see what you have to say. Confusion, fear. Oh, but there's some good words here. Fun. Ah, lovely, interesting, good. Recalling education, not my best subject. Doubting myself. Methodical. Cooking. Excellent. Exciting results. Equations. So lots of good words. Some here, practical words about mathematics, some emotive words about it. But equally, like you say, some appreciation for the subject and some enthusiasm, I think we could even go further to saying.
I think the problem-solving one there, I think, is lovely, because
Yeah.
when we were talking about the experiments and the bit, and it is, and the methodical, because
Yeah.
it is the reason why we did the experiment, the lasagna bridge, a little bit wrong,
Yeah.
was because we weren't being methodical, we weren't following the instructions. But actually, when you're doing a recipe, because I like getting food and cakes in there, when you're following that, you can't expect to get a decent cake if you put it all in the wrong order, or you don't do things in the right way. The same with experiments, the same with doing maths. If you follow it through step by step, it makes so much sense, or you can just do things really slowly.
Yeah.
And that's definitely helpful.
So there's some skills that we've talked about here that can have further applications that students are learning about. They can then calculate which is the most effective travel option, for example, based on their, working with statistics in different ways. But there are also things that really relate to real life issues. I mean, I'm just thinking about one on species reduction, for example. So there's a lot of content here that is relevant to what's going on in the world right now.
Yeah, indeed. In fact, this week has marked one of the biggest milestones in the environmental issues topic, and that was the publication of a report on how human activities are impacting our environment, especially biodiversity, because we have heard of climate change, we have heard of Extinction Rebellion, and we have heard of all these events, but at the end of the day, losing living things, organisms, one at a time is a big challenge, and that has been part of block 1 of our module, where you learn about the building pieces of our environment as it is, and it's very timely,
Yeah.
if not important.
Well, absolutely. And we asked people at home why studying STEM subjects was important, and they've mentioned quite a few of these aspects. So let's see what they said. Knowledgeable is the key word that's coming up, but also things like climate change, solving problems. It's helping, interesting, biodiversity, future education, environment, inspire more people, confidence, real life, global view, understanding issues, IT and technology. So all of these things relate to STEM subjects. And I think it demonstrates, that word cloud, very nicely, the breadth here of both application and skill.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the thing. You learn the skills, the math skills, which we're going to keep mentioning because it is important. But it's the process skills, the methodology, the problem solving, how you actually go about doing that. Because you're not just learning facts, you're learning actually how to learn, the same as all of the subjects, but you're learning how to apply the information so that you can understand. And I know students say to me, it's great because one of my students said, well, I could actually talk to somebody who came in at work and I now knew what he was talking about. I could talk about that. And he found that fantastic because he could now apply the information. He went, oh, right, I never knew that's what that meant before.
Yeah.
I mean, the communication is a good part, and not only within your study circles of the Open University students and all these forums we have, but you will be communicating and building the skills at work with your family, or even the general public, just to get them enthusiastic about what you are studying. So those skills will also eventually help in employment as well. So there is a lot that comes in addition to the knowledge.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, let's take a quick trip to the hot desk and then you can talk more about maths because everyone at home loves maths too.
Definitely. We've been talking about our favourite parts of our Y033 modules, haven't we? And there's lots of good comments that we like to pick out.
There is lots of love for maths indeed, and Kelvin has made a really good comment. He says that practice makes perfect. You've got to do it until it's automatic. But there's other things that people are loving about Y033. Helen thinks it's really interesting to discover why something happens rather than that it just happens. Maria has picked out that she's particularly interested in how the British landscape has changed due to farming and technology. And we've had a question as well. Zoe's partner wants to learn about websites and software, so she's wondering what access course would be best for them to study.
Oh, well, the tricky thing with a lot of the Access modules, we only have 3 of them, Zoe, and so many of them have so many subject areas and also so much skill. So partly, I think one of the benefits, I don't know if you two agree with this, about doing an Access course is that it gives you a taster of so many different things, but also some of the skills that you need to then go on and study at higher education level. And of course, one of the things that we know about higher education is that you specialise very late on, which is good because sometimes we start something, as I know a lot of students have, and we think, oh, I'm going to go and be a clinical psychologist, and then you start studying and realise there's a lot of mathematics involved in that, and maybe then you think, actually, I'm more interested in this area. So until you go on, you don't really specialise, and that's why the Open University degrees are structured in the way they are, with level 0 and level 1 being very broad and interdisciplinary, really focusing on the skills. Then you specialise later. So I'm afraid I don't really know the answer, but it might be Y033 that's probably the closest in line with IT, isn't it?
Indeed, this is what we call transferable skills.
Yeah.
Where you build skills in one, which you can use another. So just simply taking the software engineering, you will need to develop some sort of procedure, and that comes from experimental design. You would need to quantify the programs you are going to write, how many repeats a program will do, and that is something also comes in science.
Yeah.
Basically, in a nutshell, think of it, to become a chef, first thing they teach you, I heard, is how to chop properly.
Yes.
So the skills you get in Access module are like the skills of chopping and getting things ready, and that eventually will lead you to become a master chef in something even more cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely, and I think this idea of the transferable skills is definitely important, and we might not be able to teach website design at Access level. There are specific computing modules at level 1 and so on. But the idea of transferable skills, learning how to learn, being able to demonstrate to an employer that you know how to use digital resources, you know how to communicate, which you were talking about earlier, you know how to use maths. Maths is integral to anything to do with computing. And it's what we call digital information literacy skills, DIL skills. And they're the employability skills. And they underpin all of our modules, but often people don't know that they're there. And it's something that I'm quite passionate about, trying to encourage people. And when we do our online events in Student Hub Live, we're talking about those broader skills. And that's what's lovely about Access, because they're so interdisciplinary. They are these broad skills. And you're learning facts, that's fine. You're learning maths, you're learning engineering, you're learning biology, you're learning ecology. But you're learning how to learn. You're learning about the application and what you could potentially do with knowledge.
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And don't forget that if you're an Access student, you're part of the OU family and you can access our careers service who give great advice on things. So if you are thinking about something specific, then it's a good idea to get in touch with them and they can advise you specifically on things that might be best for you. Right, so we've spoken about maths, but I also want to talk about experiments. And John was talking about evidence earlier, and we're talking about the, whole process of observation and about testing knowledge and about replicating knowledge even to some extent. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about why students are doing some of these experiments and what the scientific method and this idea of observable phenomenon means in the context of evidence in Y033.
Science starts from observation, and that is the basic building block of an experimental method. Is you need to have a clear and specific question to investigate. And this gives you a way to build that knowledge into the topic you are interested in. And then you need to follow a specific set of steps, which we might call unbiased steps, because we always want something with subconsciously, whether we know or not. And we need to write this neatly and as clearly as possible, so that by the end, anything we do is repeatable by someone else who will do it independently, maybe at another part of the world. A cooking analog is, think of a recipe. Two dishes may use the same ingredients, but they might be combined in different ways. So you really want to make sure that you have given the person the right dish, end up making something proper rather than something very different. Yeah. So all these steps and procedures in an experimental method are an important building block of any science. And it often starts from a simple observation. I mean, there is an example of Leonardo da Vinci, and all his plans for flight were based by observing birds. But the key thing he had was he was able to sketch them and break it down, his observation, and kind of design things which were amazingly much ahead of their time. So good experimental procedure and plans will definitely pay back at the end.
But I mean, the scientific method, it's a thing, isn't it? There are certain conventions, there are ways of writing hypotheses, there are rules and regulations, and it's like a different language, I guess, to try and get your head around, and the various ways of doing things so that you can get a recipe that people can follow, for example. There are these conventions and formats. How do students best learn about those things, Isabella?
Well, it starts with this observation idea, and also the step-by-step, the idea that somebody somewhere else could do it as well. Yeah. So whenever I do savoury dishes, I hardly ever cook according to a recipe and say, oh, that was lovely, what did you do? I'm not sure. So I'm really used, but whereas in sweet dishes, I follow a recipe. And that's the experiment. I observe something, thinking, I want to do that. You observe something and go, OK, for instance, look at this table, how much weight could it actually support? Right, well, how could we go about testing that?
We're not doing that any more of that
no,
here.
No, we're not saying. But that starts with an observation. I look at this table, I think, well, it can support chocolate, it can support nice, safe glasses.
Cannot support dancing.
Cannot support anything else. We're not going to do that. But you look at something and think, right, think in your head, what could you potentially do? And you use your own experience to start with. Yes, there is a specific way we do it. Yes, there are conventions. Yes, there is a hypothesis. You will learn about them in time. The first thing is, it starts from observation. What do you want to know? How could you potentially do it? Use your own experience. If, for instance, you built a rope swing as a kid or as an adult, how did you know who could go on that rope swing? If you were trying to walk across stepping stones or balance along a log, how did you know whether that log might support you? Well, obviously, you might have fallen off or it might have broken. You looked at it. You judged things. That judging, that observation, is the scientific skill that you get to build up as a scientist if you get to do that bit. Obviously, again, I get very passionate about this one. and then thinking, well, if I decided to do that, how's Yoseph going to? How are you going to look at that and do it? Could he do what I've done? Could I do what he'd done? Can we communicate, using that word, which is fab again, can we communicate effectively to each other what we want to do and whether it's going to achieve the aim?
I must say something here as well. Any experiment, there are always issues with safety, not only for the experiment, but also the experimenter themselves. So just follow the instructions and be safe. We want you to be knowledgeable and learn about how to do things properly so that it will give good result and it will be enjoyable as well.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not just all about blowing things up in the microwave, is it?
Yes.
But again, you do learn from experience. So many scientists learn from observation. They do things, and we can say, oh, yeah, we'll do it that way. But as I've already intimated, when we did our lasagna experiment, we weren't necessarily as safe as we could have been.
Yes.
And it didn't quite go according to plan. But you do learn from experience. You can think logically, yeah, we should be safe on this one, and you can think of some things. But don't worry, you're learning those skills. We definitely don't expect you to be perfect to begin with. We're not going to know everything. Yeah. But then there might be, might like to think about these things. Had you thought about that? Fab, Joseph's given me a great idea. I hadn't thought about that before.
And again, there's so many skills here that have a practical application. Like you wouldn't perhaps put on a CV, I can build a lasagna bridge without collapsing a whole hotel. But you might want to say, I can follow instructions. There are various other things that have a massive transference in other contexts. But also, this gives a really good taster of studying STEM at the OU, because when students go on, I mean, we've been speaking about some of our, virtual lab castings and things, and there are amazing ways of getting onto a microscope in Tenerife and things at the OU if you progress with studying STEM subjects. And that practical work will always have a massive part of the overall content. Okay, one thing though that you do specifically on Y033 is OpenStudio. And some students, in particular students on other modules, may not have heard of this. Can you tell people what that is and why it's important, and what advice you'd have for students who might be using OpenStudio, which is something commonly used within the STEM modules at the OU?
The first thing is, don't panic. All new software, everything, you have to learn on the job. And the key thing is to start by looking at it logically and asking for help if you need to. But the best and first advice is don't panic and follow instructions.
We say not to panic, but there's a lot of panic in the chat room, and some students may not know what OpenStudio is, which is basically just a software program where people can put stuff up and comment on things. So it's like a virtual space, really, isn't it, where you can do things.
It's just another name for another vehicle, another way that you can share information. It's almost like you've seen forums like we have here, where you've got the chat and you've got the video and stuff. It's sort of almost like that. You basically go to a page, it says click here to upload, and you find what you want to upload, you write a little bit about it, and then you click upload.
So if you can get in here, you can probably get in there.
Yeah, you're genuine. It's actually quite simple. Yes, we all make mistakes when we use it for the first time. I've used it and I went, okay, read the instructions first time. You can't break it. Right. No. You can have a picture upside down on its side and so on. There are lots of little tips and hints about how to do that, and there's all sorts of guides around. But it's part of this digital skills.
Yeah.
You can't expect to know everything first time.
No, we've all put pictures upside down of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's just a case of you read the instructions, you give it a go, you learn. Does it work? Okay, if it doesn't, what did I do wrong, or what's not as I want it to be? Yeah. To have another go.
So part of these activities, then students will need to go into OpenStudio, put something up, and comment on other people's things.
Yeah, I think that is the best part of learning occurs when you comment and interact with your other fellow students, and sometimes you may have seen something in a slightly different way, and there is no harm in that. You can't go wrong because there are many ways of working things out. So communicating, commenting on each other and seeing what other people have done, and if something works for you, then following it up is a key part of this exercise.
And again, a nice skill you can add to your CV in terms of your DIL thing. So we've got some tips from tutors other than yourselves. Yeah. What can you share that you think is most useful to students?
Keep going.
Yeah.
Try and follow the calendar and have a go at the things. Don't worry if things don't work. That's fine. You are learning, and the practice make perfect that we already had. That's definitely stolen one of our main top tips things, because we were going to say that.
We can't now.
No. Okay. I did. Said practice make perfect. But actually, I'm going to qualify that a bit. You do not have to be perfect. Yeah. Do not worry if you're not perfect. But don't, just because you get it wrong doesn't matter. I'm not massively brilliant at maths myself a lot of the time. I have a couple of different books. I meant to bring the Science is Good Study Guide with me today, I forgot, but there's a great maths help in it, and I use it so often because it's just got the very careful, what's the difference in a percentage? Oh, I can never remember that. I just go there. Don't be afraid to have your little post-its that says, remember to do this. This is what this is. It's fine. It's okay. Just keep going.
Yeah, brilliant. And Yosef?
One idea is apply what you study, read the papers, talk to other people about what you've been doing, and it always makes much more sense when you have to explain it to someone else.
Yeah.
So study is part of the bigger picture of life. So integrate it in everything you do. And if sometimes things don't go well in one side of life, that doesn't mean the end of the world. In fact, you have tutors, you have online support, you have other peer students to help you around. So just take the big picture of study as part of your life and enjoy it. And when things get challenging, ask for others. There is no shame in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen some wonderful, very cute study buddies as well that people can explain things to, which is always good, and they can't complain in quite as much detail as a human can. So thank you very much, Yosef and Isabella, for that. We're going to have a short break now where we're going to hear some more student videos and campus tours. We're going to hear from Lauren. Then we're going to have a look at the language panel in the library as part of our campus tour. And then Lida has a student video as well. Then we're going to be coming back and talking about Y033. I hope you're still having fun in the chat. Make sure you grab a drink during this quick ad break, and we'll see you back in 5.